How you doing, Ed?
Good evening. Welcome to Cornerstone Home Inspector Education Center. Tonight and tomorrow is our two-day Connecticut law seminar. Um, we will break this up into two 90-minute webinars. I'm going to hand it over to Stan Pajerski, one of our owners, and he will get us kicked off.
All righty. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending. I am Stan Bajerski, and I'd like to introduce the other two Cornerstone owners, Jim Enowich and Scott Montfort. This is starting our third year, and we're starting off this year with the law seminar. And tonight, obviously, we're presenting part one of the ever popular and required Connecticut Law Continuing Ed. We have to get a total of 3 hours as required by the Department of Consumer Protection during each 2-year cycle. And it's pertaining to current home inspection legislation, licensing laws, and regulations. So I'd like to make a few comments before we begin the actual presentation. So Jim Scott and I were on the board of the Connecticut Association of Home Inspectors for many years, and we're in charge of presenting this portion of continuing ed year after year. For me, this is my 24th law class. I think I say it in my sleep sometimes. So we're going to try to make it as interesting as we can, but there's not a lot of twists to what we're talking about. So for newer guys, it's going to reinforce the SOPs and the statutes that define Connecticut home inspector licensing. And for us older cavemen, dinosaurs, it'll just be a review. We probably have all these things built in our reports already, at least what we have to touch base on and report on. We've submitted the same outline for this for those 24 years, but this year it got kicked back. We used to cover agreements, the parts of the agreements, how to write a proper agreement, litigation and arbitration. This year, they wanted us to omit that. So we have to spend the whole 3 hours on the legislation, regulations, and licensing laws. So those of you who may have attended our seminars in the past, it's going to be a little different this time around. Licensing went into effect in 2001. Before that, you can replace a few boards on your deck and on Saturday, and then Sunday, decide you want to be a home inspector, purchase a business card and a brochure, and you were could have at it. So licensing was driven by the Connecticut real estate profession, and in their opinion, due to inconsistency between home inspectors. So I just wanted to point that out because we are going to be talking about why the regulations were put together in an effort to make us more consistent. So Connecticut home inspector regulations. Connecticut home inspectors are regulated by the Department of Consumer Protection, DCP, under the state's home inspection licensing law. Key regulatory aspects include licensing framework. All home inspectors in Connecticut must be licensed. 2 distinct licensing levels were established: home inspector intern, a trainee status requiring direct supervision, and a licensed home inspector authorized to perform inspections independently. Education and experience requirements. To qualify for licensure, applicants typically must complete 40-hour approved home inspection education, perform a minimum of 100 supervised home inspections as an intern, 10 directly supervised, and 90 can be indirect. Successfully pass the National Home Inspector Examination or the state PSI exam. They also developed continuing education requirements. Licensed home inspectors are mandated to complete at least 20 hours of continuing education every 2 years for license renewal. All courses must be DCP approved. Many inspectors fulfill this requirement through providers such as Cornerstone Home Inspection Education Center. Well, everything that you hear through anybody that is going to give you a certificate to approve your attendance must be approved first, submitted and approved first by the state of Connecticut. Okay, Jim.
Stan, I just wanted to jump in. If anybody has any questions, you can type them in the chat bot. And if you do want to break in and talk, please do so. Remember to mute your microphone when you're done. Okay. And I just want to just expand on listen a little bit, just for 1 second, on the DCP approved courses, which Stan, Scott, and I are in charge of. This is not become a joke anymore. It used to be, you tell them what you wanted to do, and they sort of were just like, okay. These are extensive outlines we have to send in now. We have to meet their requirements for those outlines. They have to be submitted in a certain format with a bunch of information. So the state's really taking this seriously now. I just wanted to let you know that. Go ahead, Stan. Sorry.
Okay, so they developed the standard of practice and ethics. Connecticut regulations incorporate the standard of practice, or SOPs, and a code of ethics that closely mirror national standards. That means when first instituted, they were basically almost word for word the standards that the American Society of Home Inspectors had. They've been changed very little since then, and maybe we'll get to talk about one or two of those changes later on in the presentation. Inspection reports must clearly detail the condition of major home systems and components. However, it is crucial to note that the inspection is a visual assessment only and does not constitute a warranty or guarantee. And then legal reference, the authoritative and regulatory provisions are found in the Connecticut General Statutes, Chapter 400F, and the regulations of Connecticut state agencies, which encompass the SOPs, ethics, continuing ed, and licensing procedures. So definitions in the home inspection, in home inspections, and there's a lot of them, and we are going to go over, I'm going to read them all. It's a good refresher, and some of them I didn't even know the language was the way they were. In the beginning, I thought it was kind of funny that we had to put certain definitions in, and later and others are not defined. But I think if you read them and think about them, a lot of them are very important because most of the people we work with may not be aware of some of these terms. And I think also it's a big plus limiting our liability to have these things defined in the state standard. So a component is defined as a part of a system, while a system refers to a combination of interacting or independent components assembled to carry out specific functions in a home. So for instance, the boiler is a component of the heating system. So it's not standalone, but it is a component of that entire system. The inspection process. Inspect means to examine readily accessible systems and components using normal operating controls and opening readily accessible panels without requiring moving personal property or destructive measures. And then we're also concerned about safety. So unsafe refers to conditions that present significant risk of personal injury during normal use, while significantly deficient means unsafe or not functioning. So these three are broken out a little bit because they're going to come up again when we go through all the rest of them. I think it begins on the next page, but yeah, so I know it's a lot, but I'm going to go through them all. So we got to get 3 hours out of this. Definition as used in this section and sections, I'm not going to read the numbers, inclusive of the regulations of Connecticut state agencies. Alarm system refers to any alarm device, not just security alarm systems, whether installed or freestanding, including but not limited to security equipment and ejector pumps. Architectural service means the practice of architecture or practice architecture as defined in section 2088. I said I wasn't going to read those, right, of Connecticut General Statutes. Automatic safety controls are devices designed and installed to protect systems and components from unsafe conditions. So for instance, the fire eye, the CAD cell on a oil-fired heating system is actually an automatic safety control. Board refers to Home Inspection Licensing Board. Carbon monoxide detectors means a device specifically intended for the automatic detection and warning of carbon monoxide presence. Combined smoke and carbon monoxide detector means a device solely intended for the automatic detection and warning of both smoke and carbon monoxide. Components means a part of a system. Decorative means ornamental and not necessarily for the operation of the essential systems and components of a home. Department refers to Department of Consumer Protection. Describe means to report a system or component by its type or other notable characteristics to distinguish it from others. So that's highlighted along with component and inspect because those are big parts of the SOPs. So when we get into the SOPs, you're going to see that there's certain things that we have to describe and others we don't for whatever reason. Basically, the major components of the house have to be described. Dismantle means to take apart or remove any component, device, or piece of equipment that would not normally be disassembled by a homeowner during routine maintenance. Engineering service means service provided by a professional engineer as defined in the Connecticut General Statutes. Further evaluation, that should have been highlighted, means a detailed examination and analysis performed by a qualified professional, tradesperson, or service tech beyond the scope of the home inspector. Household appliances are kitchen, laundry, and similar appliances, whether installed or freestanding. Inspect means to examine readily accessible areas and components of a building in accordance with applicable home inspection statutes and regulations, using normal operating controls and opening readily accessible panels. Install means attach in a manner that requires tools for removal. This is a relatively new one. Instant hot water dispenser means a separate device installed at a sink that provides hot water through a dedicated tap. Normal operating controls means devices such as thermostat switches or valves intended for operation by a homeowner. Readily accessible area or readily accessible means available for visual inspection without moving personal property, dismantling destructive measures, or any action that may pose risk to persons or property. Next page, Jim. Readily openable accessible panel, access panel means a panel provided for homeowner inspection and maintenance that is within normal reach, removable by one person, and not sealed in place. I want to talk about this for a minute. So Scott has a, when he told me this, I was very amused by it. So there's home inspectors who won't take 4 screws out of an plywood access panel to a crawl space, but they'll take 4 screws out of the cover of an electrical panel to look inside. So I think we need to be consistent when we do our home inspections. If we're going to do one type of dismantling or removal of a cover, I think some of those access panels probably can be removed. Recreational facilities refers to equipment such as a jet tub, spas, saunas, steam baths, swimming pools, exercise, entertainment, athletic, playground, or similar items and their accessories. Report means to communicate findings in writing. Representative number means inspecting one component per room for multiple similar interior components, such as windows and electrical outlets, or one component on each side of a building for multiple similar exterior components. Me personally, I do that, but if all windows are accessible, I'll do all windows. But you really need to hammer that home. I talk to all my clients. I let them know that not everything's going to be inspected. If there's things that are being blocked, I might have to take a representative sample. And I try to tell them why other parts or other component pieces of that component were not inspected. Roof drainage system means components designed to carry water off a roof and away from the building. Significantly deficient, big term here, means either unsafe or not functioning properly. I want to talk about that for a second. So unsafe is a broad brush. If you had a second floor, two-story deck that was removed, and there's still a door that could be somebody can inadvertently open and walk out. That is a very unsafe situation. A missing electrical outlet cover is also unsafe, but is that should that be listed under significantly deficient? I think we're all going to have to make up our own minds on that. Not functioning properly. A brand new heating system could have a relay fail, and all it needs is a simple repair. Is that a significantly deficient item? It's not running properly, versus a boiler that might not even be at the end of its useful life, but it's just a pile of garbage and unsafe to operate because it could be leaking water or flue gas. So there, you have to interpret things the way you want to interpret them. Shutdown means a condition where a system or component cannot be operated by normal controls. Smoke detector means a device solely for automatic detection and warning of smoke presence. Solid fuel burning appliances means a hearth and fire chamber or similar built with a chimney or a listed assembly comprising the fire chamber, chimney, and factory-made parts designed for unit assembly without field construction. Spillage detector refers to a device. This is a new one too, I believe. I think it was 2022 or 2023. Refers to a device detecting leakage, including combustion flue gases, leaks, and liquid spillage. Structural component means an element that supports both dead loads, non-variable loads, or point loads, and live loads or variable loads. System means a combination of interacting or independent components assembled to perform one or more functions. Technically exhaustive refers to investigations that involve dismantling, extensive use of advanced techniques, measurements, instruments, testing, calculations, and other methods. And I think that we are starting to move into that as part of a regular home inspection, with certain things that we're using now that or across the country that certain areas are doing, that just adds to the length of a home inspection, which could be determined technically exhaustive. Underfloor crawl space means the area between the ground and the underside of the floor within the foundation limits. Unsafe means a condition in an accessible installed system or component that poses a significant risk of personal injury during normal use due to damage, deterioration, improper installation, or changes in acceptable residential construction standards. But notice it doesn't really say anything within the interior of the home. And there are unsafe components or items in the interior of the home. Warning equipment includes installed or freestanding smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, and combined detectors. And wiring methods means identification of electrical conductors or wires by general types such as non-metallic sheath, Romex, armored cable, BX, or knob and tube. So I think that's the last definition.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to comment on was technically exhaustive. And I can tell you, I'm not sure about everybody's contract, but I do put it in my contract that the client does have an opportunity prior to the inspection to hire me to do an exhaustive inspection for additional fees. This way, if they come back and say, how come you didn't take off the cover or this or do that? I'm like, that's part of a technically exhaustive inspection. You didn't ask for that. Well, that's what I wanted. But the contract says that you signed off on that you didn't want it because you had the opportunity to order that. So that's something you guys might want to think about putting into your agreements if they're not there.
So the purpose and scope of regulations. Regulations to establish uniform standards. These regulations create a minimum and uniform standard for home inspectors who provide or offer home inspection services. So the standards of practice, I used to think were very thin. I used to kid around and say, if you just described what they asked you to describe, it would fit on a napkin. But in essence, it's getting us all to at least touch base on the same components and describe the major components of the home and get us at least all on the same page in that respect. But after that, if you decided to take an evening and spend an hour on the internet and just pick out a couple states and punch in home inspectors in Colorado, you'll find a bunch of sample reports, and you'll see that while we're probably 50% on the same page, it goes to infinity from there. But at least we start out on the same page. Inspectors must examine readily accessible areas, systems, and components of the home and report on those that are significantly deficient or near the end of their service life. So basically what we need to tell them is, are they operable or not? Do they need some type of work to continue them or get them into proper operation? And are there any major components that are at the end of their service lives? That is a little bit difficult sometimes, because with mechanical systems, we can probably get a date from the serial number date code. A lot of contractors write the date of installation on the unit, but I've never seen in 37 years the date written on the corner shingle of a roof installed in 1999. Never seen that. So now you got to use your head a little bit, look at the condition of the roof, and determine if you think it's older or not, unless the owners have some type of documentation that tells you, or they had it installed, and you're pretty comfortable that it's a new roof. Reporting obligations. Inspectors must provide reasons for significant deficiencies and recommendations for correction or monitoring of reported issues. So I have always identified the condition of the component. If I feel it needs repairs, a lot of times I know what the repair is, but I don't really want to get involved in that. We need to pass on the next step after the inspection. If you are comfortable with a roof and you don't think it needs any attention, then you don't have to, it's serviceable right now, it's working. And additional services. Regulations do not limit inspectors from including additional services or systems beyond the requirements, provided that they have appropriate qualifications. That in itself is a big statement, because what is appropriate qualifications? A 2-hour online webinar with a certificate? You really need to be comfortable with what you're doing, and hopefully you're doing it on a regular basis. But you are allowed to do that. You make those arrangements with your individual clients. Okay, Scott, this is your spot. Is he still here? Yep.
Yeah. First of all, welcome everybody. Happy New Year. And one thing I just want to say before we get started and continue here is I want to thank my two colleagues, especially Jim Enowich, who he just spends countless hours, working with the state, putting all these seminars together as far as getting all the paperwork in. It's not easy. It's changed a lot since we were with the other organization. And I'm just happy between him and Stan, we continue to put out some really good continuing education with Cornerstone. And I just, last seminar, I forgot to mention you, Jim. I just want to say he does a lot of behind the scenes stuff, a lot of stuff that really is making this education center work for all of us. So I just want to start with that. So structural systems, required inspections. Home inspectors must examine structural components, including foundations and framing. This involves probing structural components where deterioration is suspected, unless probing would damage finished surfaces or where no deterioration is visible. Let me just talk about that one. I'm sure everybody in here, especially the guys who've been around a long time, if you're looking for decay or termite or carpentry ant damage, we've all had somebody say, "Oh, you're damaging that stuff." I mean, you have to probe, down in the basement, the sills, the floor joists. You got to do that, and sometimes you open it up to see if there's mud tubes, if they're, or not, or just galleys and it's carpenter ants. But what I will caution you is when you're outside around the windows and stuff, because I've had termite damage around windows and sills, you just got to be careful. Even when you're going around probing for rot, just be careful you don't damage it, because the homeowner could say, "Oh, it wasn't like that." So just be careful. The other thing too is when I use terminology, I try to use terminology in my report that is in the standards. Unsafe, significantly deficient. I try to use that. I know a lot of these generated reports out there have their own kind of language and stuff, but I try to, in my report, use what is in the standards. Documentation requirements. Inspectors must describe the foundation and report methods used to inspect underfloor crawl space or basement areas. They must also document floor structure, wall structure, ceiling structure, roof structure, including methods used to inspect the attic. Sometimes you can't see everything, and that should be noted in your report as well. Limitations. Home inspectors are not required to provide engineering services or architectural services as part of a standard inspection. These specialized assessments would require additional qualifications and typical fall outside the scope of a standard home inspection. Sometimes, I mean, I know we talked about this last seminar we did up in Mohegan. I'm very comfortable referring people that I know and I trust. If they screw me over, they're done. But if somebody needs somebody to help them through the process, I have a lot of guys that I know, a lot of guys I've worked with, and I don't have a problem referring them. But that you run your business how you want. But our bottom line is we're trying to help the client out as best we can, and I don't have a problem doing that. Exterior inspection requirements: wall coverings and trim. Inspect exterior wall covering, flashing, and trim for signs of damage or deterioration. Doors and attached structures. Examine all exterior doors, attached decks, balconies, stoops, steps, porches, and their associated railings. Eaves and fascia boards. Check eaves, soffits, and fascias where accessible from ground level or signs of damage or rot. Now, sometimes they're covered, they're aluminum clad, and it's rotted underneath, and you don't always notice it till you get up and you either get on the roof or up to the roof, and you see that everything's wrapped, and then you can see all the rot behind the gutter because they didn't wrap it all, and it's the old fascia board. So just something to keep an eye on. Property conditions: excess vegetation, grading, surface drainage, retaining walls when likely adversely affect the building. Access points: inspect walkways, patios, driveways leading to dwelling, entrances for safety and condition. Exterior inspection exclusions: seasonal accessories. Inspectors are not required to examine screening, shutters, awnings, and similar seasonal accessories. Erosion control, earth stabilization measures are not included in the standard inspection process. Again, as Jim noted, if you want to do extra stuff, and that's something you do, and I got to be honest with you, even with these standards, I think we all would agree that there's probably things that are not necessary in here that you might do as part of your inspection, and that's certainly up to you. Geological conditions: geological, geotechnical, or hydrological conditions fall outside the scope of a standard home inspection. Recreational facilities, swimming pools, and again, swimming pools. If I have a gunite pool, I do have somebody that I've been working with. He's actually done a couple presentations or a bunch of presentations, and I offer it to my client. A lot of the clients want you to just take care of everything, so I don't have a problem doing that. Playground equipment and other recreational facilities that are not part of the required inspection. Waterfront structures, seawall, breakwalls, and docks are excluded from standard inspection requirements. We're along the shore here, and Stan will agree. A lot of these houses we do along the shore, it does have these. If you don't live along the shore,
Scott, I'll look at them, but if I see anything that I think is a big issue, I would tell them that, of course, it's outside of the scope of my inspection, but you should hire somebody. There's companies out there that will come in and look at that in more detail. So
we also have
go ahead.
Go ahead, Steve. So we also have another question here concerning vegetation. Do we need to call out a tree leaning towards the house?
Good question. You know what? I look, and I'm just telling you from my personal experience, if there are dead limbs, trees, diseased trees, holes in it, and they're diseased, I call them out, especially if they're near the house or there's branches hanging over. A lot of times you look at the tree, you look up, and you see that there's no leaves on it in the summer. Or you see a branch I just had the other day was broken. It was resting on another branch. I call it out and I tell the client, So that's just me. So the answer is I would, but especially if it's on the house.
So,
That's-
Scott, on the sorry to interrupt you, but on a larger question of exclusions, and I can sort of give you an example of what I do. So screens, dishwashers, appliances that we're really not required to do, but most of us do. I can tell you what I do is put in the report that if there's something that's outside the scope of Connecticut and I inspect it, I do put a disclaimer in there stating that this item is outside the scope and evaluation should be considered as a convenience for the customer and not part of the formal inspection, even though it's in the report. The issue, from what my understanding is from Mike Stan's 24 law seminars, and I'm sure yours the same, if you call out something that's not in the standard, okay, and and then you don't call something else So I call out a refrigerator and it's broken, but I don't do screens. Couldn't a lawyer go in and say, you know what, you didn't follow the state standard. You called out the refrigerator, and then half my screens are missing for my client, so we're going to sue you for that. And I could go and say, well, the screens aren't part of it. What do you think?
My feeling is I've been doing this, since 2003. And I'm going to be honest, knock on wood, and maybe, my wife jokes and says I write too much. If you didn't dock it, you didn't do it. When I was a paramedic, that was the old saying, if you didn't dock it, you didn't do it. So, I mean, I think we all again, it's back to Stan saying that you could do an inspection on a napkin, because some of these are so ambiguous. And yeah, you could do one outlet per room, but to Stan's point, I get to every outlet, every window that I can get to. If I can't get to it, I put it in my report. And I do have a lot of disclaimers, but I try to do the best job I can. Most people know if you're trying to get more work listen, the agents refer you. I work with a lot of good agents, and they want a thorough job. And if you do the right thing, and all my years, other than the homeowner saying that they wanted to sue me because the buyers didn't buy the house, and I said, sir, I follow the state regulations if you want a copy. But other than that, we all make mistakes, things happen, things break. I'm honest, if something happens, if I swing my ladder around and take the bird feeder and send it across the yard, and then I'll fix it. We've all pulled a shade out, and I fix it. It happens. But yeah, you're right, Jim. I mean, I think we all go outside of the standards to some degree. I mean, if you just stick to exactly the way they are, I don't think you're doing a good job. And we had brought this, there are other standards in other states we've looked at, and Stan and I did this, and I think you might have been part of it too, Jim, where we wanted to kind of not change them, but just be it would help some of the newer people in this business to just elaborate a little bit more. A representative, what are you inspecting when you inspect? What does inspect an outlet? Everybody on here will probably tell me ungrounded, reverse polarity, loose neutrals. Can you just look at the outlet and see if it's straight up and down? It's not hanging out of the wall. Is that good enough? It doesn't say that in there. What is it? We all know what we do. We put the outlet tester in there and we test it. There's other things that we, especially now with these arc faults, you put your GFI tester in there, trips it. But let me get to the next one here.
Yep, sure.
Roof system inspection. Required element. Inspectors must examine the roof coverings, drainage, flashing, skylights, chimney, and roof penetrations. These components are critical for preventing water intrusion and maintaining the structural integrity of the home. Documentation. The inspector must describe the roof covering material and report the methods used to inspect the roof. This documentation helps clients understand both the roof condition and any limitations in the inspection process. Exclusions. Inspectors are not required to examine antenna, interiors of flues or chimneys that are not readily accessible, or other installed accessories that may present on the roof.
So I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. We have a question concerning the state standards. Do you recommend providing the client with a copy of the state standards as part of your agreement? And that's required. You need to send your client the state standards. It used to be that you had to have them sign a sheet saying that they received them. But now you can send a link that the state has if it's included in your if you're doing your agreements digitally, you can just put that link in there, and that acts as proof as that they've received them. But that has to be done. Every inspector, even if they don't have an agreement, because you're not required to have an agreement, they have to. You have to hand out the state standards. Go ahead, Scott. I'm sorry.
No, I 100%. I take it a step further. Maybe I'm old school, but not only do I send them in an email, I make them sign it and I give them a hard copy. It's old school, but you know what? I have a written signature. I have it in email. So I still continue to, and I kind of do it the old school way where I'll give them a copy other than directing them to the state. One thing I'll make note here, and I know just to talk about it, I either get up to the roof with, I have a ladder, I get up to the roof, and as long as it's safe, and or I get on the roof. And I've seen a lot of things on the roof and up to the roof. Now I know everybody's got drones and all this other stuff, and I don't have it. Well, my son has a drone. I don't have a drone, but that naked eye on the roof tells me a lot. And then when you get up there, I can get closer to the chimney. But when I'm up on the roof, I'll look down. I just had one the other day. The whole top of the flue was spalling. I could move all the bricks around, and you could probably see it from the ground, but not necessarily see inside the flue, just the top section or two when you shine the light down and up. So it's just, if you don't get up on the roof, just document the method in which you inspected it, and just make sure. Sometimes they're multifamily, and that's where a drone may come in handy, unless you lose it. Like I've heard a couple of colleagues lost their drone in the neighbor's yard. Sample roof basic narrative. Observation: the roof covering is asphalt composition shingles. The roof was inspected by walking the surface where safe and accessible, and from the ground with binoculars. The shingles appeared to be serviceable. See, to me, this is, I kind of will say satisfactory, good, fair, significantly deficient, but that's up to you on how you want to write it. With no evidence of active leaks observed at the time of inspection, normal wear consistent with age was noted. Recommendation: continue with routine maintenance and monitoring. Future repairs or replacement may be required as the roof system ages.
And we didn't have it on this one because I forgot to update it, but you want to put a limitation of inspection underneath the recommendation. If if you didn't go on the roof, and if there was if you weren't to access certain parts of the roof.
And sometimes you can see the front, you can see it from the ground, you can see it from binoculars, but the back you can't, because maybe it's a walkout, and some areas maybe multiple valley and pitches, and you just can't see it. So make sure it's really, if you got to document and let the client know. Sample gutter system narrative. Observation: the home is equipped with aluminum gutters and downspouts designed to direct water away from the foundation. At the time of the inspection, the gutters appear to be securely attached and generally functional. Minor debris was observed in several sections, which may impede proper drainage if not clean. Can lead to basement water seepage as well. No significant damage or leakage was noted. Recommendation: clean maintenance of the gutter system is advised to ensure proper water management and help prevent moisture intrusion at the foundation. Go ahead, Jim.
I got it. Next one. Oh, you want me to take over?
Oh, go.
No, Scott didn't see that you.
Oh, wait. Oh, I'm sorry. Also, yes, my apologies.
Okay.
Observation: sample skylight. The home contains 2 fixed skylights installed on the rear roof slope. At the time of the inspection, the skylights appeared to be properly flashed and sealed. No evidence of active leaks. No Flex Seal. Moisture staining or damage was observed on the interior finishes below the skylights. Normal wear consistent with age was noted. I just had one that was all Flex Sealed, so you kind of knew something was going on. Recommendation: routine monitoring is advised. The skylights are prone to leakage over time. Resealing or repair may be required in the future as part of normal home maintenance. Just keep in mind, a lot of people keep the old skylights, put a new roof on it, and when I go to do my roof, my 2 skylights are going to get replaced, because a lot of times you might have a good roof, but it has a tendency the skylights leak because they weren't flashed right, and they're getting old. Water plumbing system inspections, section 2491. Water supply and distribution. Inspect interior water supply and fixtures and faucets. Drainage system, examine drain, waste, vent systems, including fixtures. A lot of older homes we deal with copper, galvanized, cast iron, pitted, corrosion. Make sure you just document on that stuff. See, a lot of it's old to begin with. A lot of it is like somebody's coronary artery disease, where inside of those galvanized pipes, especially if the house is vacant, they get narrow, they get small, they become problematic with age. And just let the people know that that type of plumbing is at the end of its useful life. It might be functional at the time, but you're looking at some point, and you'll see sometimes PVC part of it. Like, it always cracks me up. They just replaced a small section. Why didn't the plumber? Because maybe it was a cost. Why not just replace that whole section of pipe? They just cut out a small section, and that you see that all the time. Fuel systems, check fuel storage and distribution. Drainage equipment, examine drainage sumps, sump pumps, and related piping. Do you guys hopefully all test the basement grinder pumps, ejector pumps? You run them, make sure they're working, make sure the bathroom ones are working. I had one the other day that was going, I was wondering where it was going, and ended up going into the sump pump. They piped it all the way to the sump pump. Go ahead, Jim. Oh, wait. The inspector must describe the water supply, drain, waste, and vent piping materials for properties with on-site well systems. Visible components must be described. Water heating equipment and energy sources must be documented, along with location of the main water and fuel shutoff valves. A lot of these houses, they run all new PEX and they don't have a shutoff, or flips. I had a flip the other day, had no shutoffs for the outside, just ran it all the way. So just something to keep an eye on. If you're watching this now at home or in the future, not you guys now, viewing code is CTSTAND, Connecticut Stan 2025. Huh. There you go, Stan. Plumbing inspection exclusions. Home inspectors are not required to inspect clothes washing machine connections, wells, well pumps, water storage equipment, water conditioning systems, solar water heating systems, fire and alarm sprinkler systems, private waste disposal systems, or instant hot water dispensers, although we've all turned them on to see if they get hot. Additionally, inspectors don't need to determine if water supply and waste disposal systems are public or private, evaluate water quality or well yields, assess well pump longevity, examine internal conditions of water storage equipment, or operate safety valves or shutoff valves. Again, I always offer, I have a well guy that I work with all the time. You guys probably know it. Know him. He comes out and he does a yield and recovery, not a flow test, and he does the whole the well equipment, and I offer that to my clients. I advise them, and I haven't had one person yet not do it, and we found some issues as well as having somebody come in and do the septic. As far as all the other stuff, it says we're not required to inspect clothes washing machine connections. I do look for corrosion. A lot of the shutoffs are corroded, they're leaking, they're dripping. I will tell you, if it's off and you want to test the washing machine, leave it off, because sometimes I've had family members turn them on and then they start to leak. So again, it's not if it's off, it might be off for a reason. House might be vacant. They might be on vacation. I just make sure my client, anything like that, I make sure my client during their final walkthrough, I have a little pre-closing checklist. If you want it, I'll give it to you. Stan has it as well. I think Stan's the one that gave it to me. It's a nice little mini inspection for people to do their final walkthrough. And if there's things that were not on or not working, they got a chance, or the people banged into the walls and pull holes in it, or now the wash machine was switched out for another one and it doesn't work. So it kind of gives them a chance to catch it before they close. Just another way to help the client. Go ahead, Jim.
I want to just break in. Determine if the water supply and waste disposal systems are public or private. We don't need to do this, but I know most of us are putting in, is the water public or private? Is the waste septic or town? So, what I do, just to let you know, what I do recommend is, if it's public water and you see the meter, you still put per client. Same thing with if they're telling you it's septic, I put per client. I also put in a more extensive narrative that the system appears to be running on a septic system. However, I do strongly recommend that you have it evaluated and determine if it is still a septic system and not public. I can tell you twice that I've had people call me up and go, I'm on the main street in Bristol and I've just found out I have septic, and because it's backing up, and the town came out and said, no, you are, you're on a septic system, you're not on town sewer. So they called me up because I did the inspection and I looked up the report and I said, listen, you told me it was public, and I put in the report that you should confirm with the town that you're on public. That's in the report. So you didn't do your due diligence. So even though we're going to be answering some of these questions, protect yourselves, protect yourselves, protect yourselves. And yes, we have a question here to share our post-inspection checklist. I'll have Stan send that to me and I'll post that to our website on our links of interest page.
Yeah, I'll do it.
I got
And
about
I
5
had,
more minutes.
yeah,
Scott, you
Jim,
have about 5 more
just
minutes
to
and I'll take over. Go ahead.
yeah, just Jim's point too. I had one that was, I mean, if it's, if they say it's septic, usually we're having a septic inspection, but I had one right in Milford, and they insisted it was an MLS listing. The agent said it was city, and it turned out to be septic, but he went back to the homeowner and they were able to pay for actually hooking it up again. But again, that's all documentation. Electrical system inspections, service components, inspect service drop. Service drop is the wires coming from the pole to the house. Entrance conductors, where it connects at top all the way down to the panel and to the house, to the panel, to the meter panel. Equipment and grounding. Distribution panels. Examine interior components of service panels and sub panels. If there's paint on the wall, make sure if you fear of damaging finished surfaces, make sure you document that. I open up every panel. If it's multifamily and there's 50,000 panels, I open up every one of them. I open them up. I snap pictures. I look inside, and I look to see. My biggest thing is check the conductors, overcurrent protection. Make sure the breakers are. Look at the wires. Are they too big, too small? Is it the right 20 different breakers, multiple taps, multiple twins? It could be a very small panel like I had the other day, and they had all twins in a sub panel. Just make note of what you see. Is it in here to say that? No, but we all do it, and we can go on, and there's a lot of other things we look for, and that goes back to the point: are we going beyond the standards? Fixtures and outlets. Test representative number of fixtures. One per room. One per room. I hit every one if I can. If there's furniture in the way, if stuff is blocking, I make note. I make note of my report. All randomly tested outlets were functional. There likely some blocked by furniture. Just make sure you can put that little disclaimer in your report, which I'm sure most of us do now. The inspector must describe the amperage and voltage rating of the electrical service, the location of the main disconnect and or disconnects and sub panels, and the wiring methods used throughout the home. Look for aluminum wiring. Is it BX? Is it a metallic cable? Romex, knob and tube. Additionally, inspectors must report on the presence of aluminum branch wiring, which can present a safety concern in residential properties. Every once in a while, I'll see one. Some towns a little bit more than others, but you still see knob and tube part or more. You might see the whole house not have, only maybe in the attic or a couple areas, or there might be stuff that's been abandoned and they just left it there. But just make note of it. Electrical inspection exclusions. Remote control devices. We're not required to examine remote control devices unless they are the only control device for a system. Fans. I just did 3 of them the other day. That's what turned them on. Alarm systems and their components fall outside the scope of a standard electrical inspection. Low voltage systems, wiring systems, and components do not require inspection as part of the standard process. Access lighting, all that stuff in the front. Solar and generator systems, solar systems and on-site generators are excluded from standard inspection requirements. Additionally, home inspectors are not required to measure amperage, voltage, guys do it, or impedance as part of their standard inspection. These measurements typically require specialized equipment and may fall under purview of a licensed electrician rather than a home inspector. And some guys have electrical background and they may choose to do that. Again, do they have to? No. Heating system inspection. Required inspections. Home inspectors must examine all installed heating equipment, including the associated vent systems, flues, and chimneys. This ensures that the heating systems are functioning properly and safely venting combustion products. I look at the clean out. I put a mirror up there. I shine my light. I try to look at the bottom of the chimney. I try to look down best I can. Obviously, you can't see in the middle, and it's always recommended to have an inspection of the chimney by a qualified chimney contractor or chimney sweep. Documentation requirements. Inspectors must describe the energy source used by the heating system, such as gas, oil, electricity, and the heating method by its distinguishing characteristics, such as forced hot air, hydronic, water, or radiant. And we don't, the exclusions are in here too, so I'll say. Inspectors are not required to examine the interior or flues or chimneys that aren't readily accessible, heat exchangers, humidifiers, dehumidifiers, electronic air filters, or solar space heating systems. I do look at filters. I pull them out, look at them. Are they dirty or clean? They also don't need to determine a heat supply adequacy or distribution balance. Whether the heat is, I mean, sometimes you turn the heat on and it's blowing great at this side of the house. The other side, it's not. They got ductwork. They got registers in the ceiling in the basement. It's real cold down there. Heat's blowing out. So, I mean, I make note of it and I tell them, I don't think this house is getting enough heat down here in the basement. There's only one return on the main floor. But I do mention some of these things. Is it going out of the standards? Listen, I try to do the best job for my client and let them know that, hey, it's warm on the main floor. The basement's really cold. There's only 2 registers, no returns. Some of these houses if they're older, that's the way they were built. We're not doing code inspections, but at the same time, we try to let our clients know that, the heat distribution, it's pretty cold down here, and I had the heat on for a good hour or so, and I cranked it. So
you do have to determine the lack of heat in a finished space, though. So if you've got like that half bathroom in the center hall colonial that's got no heat source, which is very common, got to put that in the report, stating, my comment reads, I noted heat in all rooms with the exception of the half bath, with the exception of the bonus room over the garage, which they didn't feel that they needed heat in. So if it's finished space and it's habitable space and it does not have a heat source, you've got to put that in the report.
Yeah, wherever it is, I make note of that. It's just sometimes even if it has heat, it's not great heat. Or
Can would I be able to ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to put it in the chat.
No, go ahead.
I'm going to share. I'm a pretty seasoned home inspector. I do about 225, 230 a year, single families. I had a case arise this year. Pretty interesting. Pretty nice house going for $2.5 million, Scarsdale, New York, and tested the heating system. We test a representative number of registers. I'm trying to get as many as I can, but I don't photograph every single register, right? So 5 months come down the road, do a walkthrough for the house. So the house was inspected in the winter. Walkthrough came through in the late summer. They closed on the house, and heating season came through this year. And the client called me up and said, hey, Bill, we didn't get any heat in this one room. And we had an HVAC tech come by, and they said that the duct is disconnected. And I said, well, all right, well, I appreciate you letting me know. I'm biting my nails. But, just a good case in point, I have now gone to the extent to try to take as many pictures of registration in homes, in rooms, as I possibly can for that reason now. You learn from every one of these, right? But this one particular room was an add-on, and I had heat from the ceiling, but not from the floor. And I thought maybe it was a motorized damper or a manual damper. It could be a whole host of things, but just a good food for thought and a good discussion here.
Well,
Thank you for that.
you know, William, to your point, maybe it's just me. I turn the heat on and I check every register in every room. I'll walk around and I'll touch them. I'll leave it on and make sure some of it's blowing out, some of it's not. Some part of the baseboards are getting hot. Some rooms don't have it, like Jim said. That's just me. And again, I had a house the other day that everything was coming from the attic down, and there was like just 2 registers on the ceiling in the basement, and the basement was finished, and an in-law apartment, which was illegal, but and it was cold.
Listen, I'm with you, Scott. I'm with you, but
cold.
You know,
And
the pictures are the proof, right? So
yeah, I mean,
he's asking me what about this room, and I'm like, yeah, I don't have a picture of that.
I mean, I think some guys probably I take a lot of pictures, and I may not use them all, or I may just have them in the report, but you could definitely, I mean, back in our day, there was no pictures. It was all handwritten and a summary, and nobody wanted pictures. Now everybody expects pictures, and that's just kind of the way the time has changed. I would go back to the easier times, to be honest with you. But
if I could, I'd like to ask a question about that, though.
Go ahead, David.
If the problem was that the duct was disconnected from the diffuser, what is a picture of the diffuser going to do?
No,
Well,
nothing coming out.
He would mean the picture of the ductwork being all connected, I'm sure.
Well, no, you probably use some kind of thermometer to prove that there's temperature coming out of that duct, right?
you're using a thermal imaging camera, right? Is that what you're saying, William?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're
So,
using.
gentlemen, I love this kind of stuff, but we do have a lot of slides left and information to get to.
Sorry,
If we have
Stan.
time at the end, we can get back to this. Is that okay?
We're actually okay on time, Stan. Okay, Scott, do you want to finish up air conditioning and then I'll take over, or are you okay keeping going?
And going back to, I don't know if you can see this. This is a small little camera. I think this is the one that William probably has, the little one right there. The little, you might have a bigger one. That's what you're talking about, right? Yeah. It's actually, it has a purpose. Air conditioning systems, required inspections. Home inspectors must examine all installed central and through wall cooling equipment. This includes both indoor and outdoor components of split systems, as well as window or wall mounted units that are permanently installed. Documentation requirements. Inspectors must describe the energy source used by the cooling system, typically electricity, and the cooling methods by its distinguishing characteristics, such as a split system, package unit, or through the wall. I even turn on the little window or the wall units that are through, just a wall unit that's a window unit. And they put in a wall. I'll fire it up, if it's plugged in, I'll turn it on. They're old, a lot of times all gummed up and dirty, but I do it for the client. Exclusions. Inspectors are not required to inspect electronic air filters that may be part of the air conditioning system. They also don't need to determine cooling supply or distribution balance throughout the home, adequacy or distribution balance throughout the home. Go ahead, Jim. When not to inspect, operate air conditioning. Outside temperature is too cold. Most guidelines recommend not operating central AC when the outdoor temperature has been below 65 degrees in the last 48 hours. Running the compressor in cold weather could damage the system. Plus, if you turn it on and if it's that cold, the compressor is not going to kick on. You're just going to get cold air. It's just blowing cold air. Power or system off. And that's why if it's in the middle of the winter, I make sure prior to closing, prior to purchase, that they have somebody make sure the system is functioning. Their final walkthrough. I mean, I document the heck out of it. I couldn't be tested, and here's why. Power or system off. If the unit is winterized, breaker is off, or disconnect is pulled, inspector should not energize the system. System is damaged or unsafe, exposed wiring, missing panels, refrigerant leaks, or other safety hazards. No access. Condenser blocked by vegetation, which I make note of it. A lot of those condensers are wrapped with trees. shrubs. I always tell the clients that's got to be open. Or like my father who had no AC in the summer, he goes, I got no AC. I went over there. Guess where the dryer vent was? Blowing right in. And all the fins, it was like a sweater, and we had to clean it all off. And it worked fine after that. But he never serviced the thing in 2007. He's never serviced it since 2007. He said, Dad, what are you doing? No access. It's blocked. System is shut down for the season. Covers installed on condensers or winterized lines. Client limitations. Seller agent instructions not to operate common and vacant or foreclosed property. We've always had that agent that turns the water on in the house when there's no water. Everything's supposed to be on before the inspection. Electricity, water, and it's not. And they go, oh, the owner said I could turn it on. They turn it on. Water's pouring out of the second floor because the pipes froze. I mean, whether they knew it or didn't know it, but I don't turn it on if it's off. Beyond scope inspect. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Inspectors are not required to verify refrigerant levels, pressure tests, or thermostat calibration. That falls under HVAC contractors.
So we have a question, and I want to comment on beyond scope. Do you recommend duct cleaning where you see pet hair and debris in the ducts?
I open them all the time, and and honestly, Tom, you've been doing this a long time. There's not one house other than my house, because I'm anal that way. Maybe the rest of you guys are too, but besides Cheerios, carpenter, and plus you open them, you see carpenter ants nice and warm in there, and all kinds of other bugs, and Cheerios and necklace and beads and hair. A lot of times I tell them, have them cleaned, and that's in my report. I do it all the time.
I put it in. I put it in as a standard comment because when I'm describing the distribution system, I just put in the distribution system as ductwork, and then I give a recommendation on every single one that says you should get your ducts cleaned and serviced. Boom, 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 because I don't want any headaches with it. And this way, prior to inspection, if you did miss a disconnected duct, it would be found at that time. That covers you. Oh,
and on a rare occasion, I'll just point this out. I know if somebody on this had to have it, even when I peek in a return, I've had returns. Usually the asbestos-like material or appears to be asbestos. I've seen it on the inside of the returns, as well as when you go down. You see it in the basement. It might have been removed by a homeowner, by a novice, but I make sure I look at the ducts. I look for residue, especially hydronic heating systems. You'll see something, and you just point it out. And there's been people who have gotten in trouble, and they thought as an organization, the prior one we were we could discipline people. That's not what we told them. That's not what we're for. We're here to educate them. But certainly, thanks for letting us know.
Yeah, I got a question for you. So on Beyond Scope, inspectors are not required to verify refrigerant levels, pressure tests, or thermostat calibration. That falls under HVAC contractors. Are you calling out the R22 refrigerant when you see it? To tell your client that your condenser is using the R22?
Well, it's funny because 410. I mention it. The other thing is, if 410 is out now, it's R34, 35. Stan, correct me on that one. But I have a 2-year-old heating system with the cooling coil inside is 410A, and I end up shopping around, and I found a unit because there ain't many out there of 410As, just so it'd be compatible and I wouldn't have to change the coil. But I meant, if it's R22, Jim, chances are that sucker is pretty old, and I'm going to be making note of it, and now if it's 420, it's R22. Chances are, if you look at the serial number, I pretty much look at all the serial numbers, and I can other than the thermal prides, you have to call. There's a few out there you got to call the company to get the age, but I try to get the age as best I can. And when I look at it, sometimes water heaters look like they're brand new, and they're actually pretty old. But
my understanding on the 410A is that's going to be around for a while. It's going to be a little bit expensive as it gets, 2030, 2035, but it's still, you're still going to be able to get it. It's just going to be expensive. Where the R22, unless they have it, it's done.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure if they saw. I have a couple guys that say they have some, but I couldn't be. I don't know for sure if that's completely out now or not. But 410 is out.
Do you just want to keep going? You're doing a great job.
Best
Up to you.
practice narrative when not tested. Okay, the central air conditioning system was not operated due to recent cold weather. Operating a system in low temperatures may cause damage to the compressor. Evaluation of the cooling performance should be conducted during appropriate weather by a qualified HVAC contractor. One thing about heat pumps, most people know if it's in heat mode or AC mode, chances are if it's in heat mode, AC should work, and if it's in AC mode, heat should work on those. A lot of times you do these condos or houses and you're like, oh, the AC's on. It's not the AC, it's a heat pump. Well, hopefully it's not the AC. Nobody switched and turned it on. Interior inspection requirement. Oh, what was that?
Nothing. Keep going.
Oh, interior inspection requirement. Why am I echoing?
Let me check if anybody else has a microphone on. You're not echoing on our side here.
Okay. Surface inspection. Oops, that's weird. Sorry, guys.
Do you want me to take over?
Yeah, surface inspection. Examine wall, ceilings, and floors for significant defects or damage that could indicate structural issues or water intrusion problems. Cupping could be wet basements. Animal stains in the floor from animals. Baseboard heat leaks, window leaks. There's a lot of reasons. Refrigerator leaked, dishwasher leaked. Just make sure you take a look. If you can get, the nice thing about an unfinished basement, everything's below it. Yeah, you can see. But walls, we all see cracks. Seasonal changes, hot, cold. Maybe not a great taper when he was taping. And you start to see the corner beads crack, and you see some dial cracks over the windows. That they butted it up, didn't do a great job with a butt joint, and it does happen. It does that mean it's structural? If the crack goes all the way down to the basement foundation, and the windows, you go outside and the windows racked, and there's a crack to the foundation. You just got to be smart. If you see something you're not sure. If you're on, listen, there are times I'll call electricians. There are times I'll call my buddy and say, hey, what do you think of this? What's your thoughts on this? Don't, we don't try to bullshit. You're just be honest. You're not sure. This is something I'm not familiar with. I've never seen this before. Let me get back to you. I'll take some pictures. And you know what? I've done that before many times, and the clients appreciate it. Just be honest. And we know a lot. But certainly there in this business, if you think you know everything, I know Steven's on here, Stan's been doing this a long time. There's always something that comes up and it surprises you, and it's something that you've never seen before. Stairway and railings, inspect steps, stairways, and railings for safety concerns, proper construction, and stability issues that could present hazards. We're not doing a code inspection. If there's steps without handrails as a safety, I always recommend it to my clients. I always recommend adding handrails. They may not be done to today's standards, but it's always nice to mention it in there. Cabinets and countertops, check countertops and a representative number of installed cabinets for proper installation, loose drawers, handles, hinges, they're all that way, and I make note of it. Are they functioning? Is there any damage, scratches, nicks? A lot of people have it, dog scratches. Nicks loose, the countertops, you lift them up and the island lifts up, especially in the bathroom. The vanities are you can move them around. The tops are loose. Doors, windows, and garage. Examine a representative number of doors and windows plus garage doors and garage door operators for proper function and safety features. We press the buttons. Photo cells. If sometimes they're way off the floor, sometimes they have them together hanging off the ceiling. Just make sure. I'm sure we all do that. And just be careful. I fixed a couple garage doors from some of those cheap. Stan's laughing because he's had it happen to you. You sit there and you hold it, and it's like, and all of a sudden the J bar bends, it pulls out, and you're like, oh no. So if it doesn't go back up with a little resistance, or I'm not sure, be careful, because if you haven't done it already, I think Stan would say we've had a couple ourselves. I had to replace a couple. I ended up replaced one of the panels. It was a newer one. I was able to do it. So I'm very careful. Home inspectors are not required to inspect paint, wallpaper, and other finished treatments that are primarily decorative in nature. I will mention to probably, hey, client, this house looks like it's going to need some painting. Mars imperfections on stairs. If it's a flip and they haven't come back and painted it, I make note of it. You'll see it. The workers will mar up the risers, or they'll hit it with stain. I make note. Depends on the house you're doing. And if you're doing a walkthrough on a flip or new construction, there's a lot of things that are not finished. They got Post-its all over the wall and tape everywhere where they got to touch up the paint. I also do not need to examine, they also do not need to examine carpeting, window treatments such as curtains and blinds, central vac systems installed in a home. Although with a central vac, I will press the button or flip it on, see if it works, or put a quarter in there. If you never saw that trick, if you flip it up to put a quarter, there's two little points that have contact when you put the hose in. If you stick a quarter in there, it'll go on. And I'll say, hey, it works. Do I have to do that? No, but everybody thinks it's cool when you do it with a quarter. Additionally, household appliances and recreational facilities fall outside the scope of a standard home inspection. I think Steve Gladstone, who's on here, I think ASHI includes in their standards, which our standards are pretty much came from the ASHI standards, and I do believe that the appliances are in those standards.
They're recommending it now.
Right. There's a section in there. Although, some inspectors may offer appliance inspections, everybody turns on this, I put microwave, I check everything. Some guys write down the brand, some guys write down the serial number, some guys go and look for recalls on the stuff. I just make sure they're working and I make note of it. If they want to swap it out, it was working at the time of the inspection. Does that happen all the time? No, but I'm sure it's happened before. Warning equipment inspections, smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors. Okay, smoke detectors. Inspectors must report on the presence or absence of smoke detection equipment throughout the home. In my report, I'll note which rooms they're in, how many of them. Do I test them? No. I shouldn't say that. If I can reach it, I'll press one and then the whole house goes off, or just that individual one goes off. If it's hardwire or battery, there's ones that you can't get to if they're on voltage ceilings or up too high, so I do the best I can. If they're yellow, to me, if it's yellow, it's probably older than 10 years, usually about 10 years. I just change mine. If they're starting to get that yellow color to them, they're probably older. You can just put something in there that have somebody come out and take a look on and make sure everything is safe. Carbon monoxide detectors. Inspection must document carbon monoxide detectors, which are critical safety devices in homes with combustion appliances. On a rare occasion, somebody will probably recommend putting one in. You should have it in every house, even if it's electric heat. Hey, things burn, that can cause carbon monoxide. But generally, sleeping areas, basement, I'm like I said, I have combination ones. Even my hardwire ones next to it, I have a battery. I'm extra cautious. That's just me. Location documentation. Inspectors must indicate the location of warning equipment by describing the room or space where each device is installed. I think most of us, since our standards have changed a little bit, we have a report, whether it's a picture report or documents each room, and you add it where those safety devices are located. And again, I still say have somebody come out and make sure that they're functioning properly. And then, safety reasons, obviously. Testing procedures. The report must indicate whether warning equipment was tested, the testing method used, and results of any test performed. I think back in the day, go ahead.
Can I interrupt you?
Sure, go ahead.
I've been a fireman for 45 years. I've been a deputy fire marshal. One of the things that we do in our reports is we list where they are. We take photographs of them, but we do not test it. And in red letters on the report, we say that smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms and heat detectors are not tested at the time of the inspection. And I'll tell you why you shouldn't be testing them. because these people are not going to move in for probably another month. And if you push that button, that may be the last time that carbon monoxide or smoke alarm goes off. So now that night, the people that own that house may not have any protection because you tested it. So my guys do not test any of that stuff. We just write in the report that they are not tested and should be upgraded or tested at the time of their moving in. Be careful with that, because the fire marshals didn't want it and the building department didn't want it. And so they dumped it on us last year.
Correct. And they wanted us initially in the verbiage. Remember, Stephen, they wanted us to test it. And even in my report, to your point, in my report, it says if they're not current and up to date, in my report on every one of them, if they're not current and up to date, have a qualified alarm company come in and repair, replace, up to date, and, put them in the appropriate areas. But yeah, that was a back and forth. You're right. The fire marshal didn't want it. And then they were going to throw it on us. And our argument is, again, how do you test the one that's, I've even, to your point, I've even pressed a carbon monoxide detector in a house, and next, the fire department showed up. It was just to press the button. It was right there. And that was several years ago. So
you don't know what they're connected to, but just recommend that they all be replaced. That's all.
Well, the new state, we have a couple of questions here. The state law has changed, as you know, and it just says that we have to determine the location and number and age of the smoke detectors.
Not age.
We have to determine if we feel that they're older than 10 years old. That's in the new law.
Recommend that they be replaced.
Well, you can do that, but if they're brand new, do they have to be replaced?
You have no way of knowing whether or not they're functioning. And so we just have a blank statement that says we do not test them and that they should be tested or replaced at the time of moving in. That's all. So just be real careful with this. I'm only saying it so that you don't get sued over somebody. When it turns into a wrongful death suit, it's going to be a bad thing for any of us.
Right. But the new state law is pretty specific on what they want us to do. And if possible, they're telling us to determine if they are over 10 years of age. If we are unable to determine that, then we put that in the report. But we have to put in the location, the number, and if we feel that they're 10 years or older. If we can't determine that, we put that in the report. We also put in the report that they should be tested prior to moving in. But just to say that they all should be, replaced if they're all brand new, the state law is pretty specific. It's brand new. They got rid of the $250 credit at closing. So they just have to give a affidavit at closing. The seller has to give an affidavit if they're carbon monoxide, if they're smoke detectors, and if they're functional, and if they're hardwired. That's for houses built after 1990.
I know you're going to kill me for this, but I know Stan especially is going to kill me for this, for asking this question, but real important for me, and I document it every time, just like Steven said. I wasn't required previously to pull off a smoke detector head to look at the age of the stamp at the back. Now you're telling me, Jim, that I am?
No.
You don't have to pull a smoke detector. Go ahead, Stan.
No, he's not required. It's kind of a tricky language. They're saying that they would like to know, but if you don't determine the age, you have to put that in the report that the age was not determined.
I just say that the smoke detectors would be on the scope of a general home inspection and that they should be replaced prior to moving into the structure.
Even if they're new?
I can't verify if they're new. They could have shined them up.
Well, that's
you know that. People fire the inspector all the time. Let's wet the roof and let the inspector look at it.
Listen, this is all for naught. The state law is very specific, and we have a webinar, an hour webinar just on this new law. And I'm not pulling this out of my butt. You have to determine the location of them, the number of them. So if there's 4 smoke detectors, you have to put where they are: 1 in the basement, 1 in the main level, 2 on the second floor. And then, if possible, determine if they're over 10 years of age. If you're unable to determine that, then You put that in the report. I was unable to determine. Recommend that you have them evaluated by a fireman or replaced. But you're not supposed to touch them. You're not supposed to press buttons. You don't know if they're connected to an alarm system. Stephen makes a great point that they're not going to be functional after you test them. There's so much liability. But if you've been an inspector and you're looking at many, many different components, listen, and Scott's right, they all get yellow. And if you see a yellow one and it looks like it's huge, then that's an old detector and you've got to use some common sense. At the end of the day, the law is the law. And it's just the number, the location, and if possible, if they're over 10 years of age, period.
And in addition to that, I always have in my report that smoke detectors are recommended on every level in the home, inside every bedroom. Monthly testing is important to ensure they are working properly. These devices can be life-saving. So if smoke detectors are not currently installed or outdated, we strongly recommend installing new up-to-date units to Stephen's point. So, but no, I agree. It's something that was thrown at us, but again, every house I go to, they're all yellow. A lot of them, unless it's a fairly new house, and they probably haven't been changed. My father, 2007, he hasn't changed them. I made him change them recently, and they were all yellow. That's just something to me. The older they get, they'll start to get yellow.
We have a couple of minutes left. This leads us into our next slide of what the law means for real estate sales. Affidavit requirement. In any sale of a 1 or 2 family dwelling or a unit in a condo, common interest community, the seller must provide a signed affidavit to the buyer stating the property has detection equipment and carbon monoxide detection warning equipment. The devices are in working order. The devices are in the required locations under Connecticut law. There's no more $250 credit. Sellers used to be able to avoid this affidavit by giving the buyers $250 at closing. The option now is eliminated. The affidavit is mandatory. Closing risk. If the affidavit isn't provided, it can delay or even derail the closing, since attorneys and lenders often require it as part of the transfer of documents. So it's pretty specific. Everybody was taking that $250 that they were getting and going out to dinner, celebrating their house, and then all the houses were burned. So let's see what we got. Do you want to go, Scott, or do you want me to?
Connecticut,
we only got about 5 more minutes left.
Yeah, Connecticut updated smoke and CO detector law effective October 2025. Effective October 1st, 2025, Connecticut is implementing new requirements for solely battery-operated smoke detectors sold in the state. These devices must be 10 years old, sealed alarms with non-rechargeable, non-replaceable batteries. The law also, that is true. A lot of the ones that I purchased for my house are 10 years, and they're not rechargeable.
All the new smoke detectors are 10 years non-replaceable batteries. That's state law.
So when they're done, they're done.
That's it. Even if they beep, you have to throw them out.
Yep. Which is actually a pretty good idea, because some of those old ones, they get a lot of cooking grease on it, and who knows if they still work like they did when they were new. People just keep changing batteries. The law also introduces new mandates for home inspectors. They are now required to report on the presence, location, and number of smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. Inspectors must verify if the detectors were testable, confirm that they are less than 10 years old, and report the test results.
So we went through that already.
Well, yes. Go ahead.
These updates are crucial for ensuring the safety of residents and facilitating the smooth completion of real estate transactions by confirming the presence of compliant detection equipment in homes.
All right. You know what we're going to do? We're going to take the last 5 minutes and just talk. We're going to go over a couple of things and then we'll finish up. We're not going to read any more on the PowerPoint. So tomorrow we're going to start at 7 p.m. again. Tomorrow I will send out another link like I did with a login and everything. So, just come in and log in. Certificates, will be sent out the following day. That should be Wednesday. And everybody will get their certificates who finished both webinars. If you're unable to attend tomorrow for some reason, if you have an emergency or something pops up, don't panic, because both these webinars will be available on our website for viewing. So if you miss tomorrow for some reason, we'd love to have you here because we like the questions and everything. Don't panic. You'll be able to watch it and get your credit. You know, the longer I do this, what I'm trying to be very, very specific and careful about is not getting so much into my own habits. And when I train people, not a lot of inspectors do. Anybody who's fully licensed in Connecticut, it's considered a supervisor and can train an intern. And a lot of guys don't. I do. And I tell my guys and gals when I'm training them, you need to read these state standards twice a year, at least. And they just look at me like I'm crazy. And I said, I still do it. I do it once a year. I just read them over. I don't want to get into any habits where I think I know better than other people or what the state law is concerning smoke detectors, concerning appliances, concerning anything. I want to follow the state standards as much as I can. I want to do a great job for my client. I want to go above the state standard as much as I can without getting ridiculous and outside the scope of my knowledge. Like Stan said and Scott said, we're not electricians. We're not heating contractors, although some of us may have that background. But very few of us have the complete background of everything. We know a little bit about everything. So when you can get into a place where, you know, this is how I do things and I feel it's better for the client and I'm not going to do this and I'm not going to do that. That's not going to do you any good in court when the competing attorney pulls out the state standards and said, how come you didn't at least tell us you didn't know how old they were, the smoke detectors? That should have been done in the report. So these state standards, although, you know, I feel that they could be better, they're a good starting point for you, and they can really, really protect you in a lot of ways. I don't know if Scott and Stan have anything else they want to chime in on.
I think that you need to know the standards inside and out so you can complete your report. But today, because we have software, I think that most people already have what they need to include that's required by the standards already built in. So it's hard to miss something that the standards require, at least with mine. You know, if I complete the report properly, it'll have all the things that I need to put in there. But I am, as much as I'm looking out for my client's best interest, because that's why they hired me, I'm also trying to limit my liability. And to get 37 years into this business, that's really, really important to make sure that you're not opening up your liability. I had an attorney tell me a long, long time ago that if you portray to have some expertise, but ultimately you do not, because you're not a licensed electrician, not a licensed heating guy, not a licensed plumber, you have to be very careful how you word things and portray your expertise. So that's always stuck with me. But everybody's going to do what they have to do. Just be careful out there, because our asses are, you know, people go in and make sometimes the money we're making to do one component. And we're putting our butts out there for everything in that house. And we can't possibly know everything. And that's where all the disclaimers and all the other good stuff that we have to put in a report, probably as much as what we find, I think. We have 50% protection and 50% findings. Just, you know, don't let anybody take you out of your routine.
Nope.
And, you know, and do your thing.
I think that there was a lot of great input tonight. I think William brought up a lot of great issues, pictures, documentation. I think if you do that, then, you know, you can really, really protect yourself. So that being said, I'm going to end it tonight, and we will see everybody tomorrow at 7 p.m. sharp. And I will, again, send out a click meeting link If you don't receive that link for some reason, you can go onto our website, click on the page that says click meeting. All you do is you click on click meeting and it'll have the login code. And it's the same thing like getting an email from us. So our login information is always available on our website. For some reason, if the email got put into the spam, you can just go right into our website and log in any single time. And thank you very much for attending tonight.
All
See you
right, thank
tomorrow.
you,
Thank
boys
you.
and
Thank you
girls.
so much.